Hold on. Right, let's go. So just tell us a bit more about your parents and about your siblings.
I had 2 sisters and a brother, but my elder sister died at the age of 5, and I think I drove my brother crazy because I shared a room with him, and he was 8 years older than me. And I had a lovely relationship with my sister. I can still remember her bathing me and doing all sorts of things. I came from a very happy, fairly strict home, but full of love and kindness. I know I used to drive my mom crazy. She was a tiny little lady, and when she couldn't catch me, she used to throw things at me.
And just tell me what did your mom and dad do?
My dad was a blacksmith, but from the time I can remember, he was the foreman blacksmith. And I can remember spending time with him during the school holidays, and I loved watching him work under a heavy steam hammer. He could make anything out of iron, absolutely anything.
Where did he work?
He worked at number 19 shaft on Crown Mines. So he was above ground miner.
And your mom?
My mom was a seamstress, okay. Then began to make dresses privately, and then eventually started a dressmaking school.
At home.
Okay. All right, and then so you went to the army. Where were you based in the army?
Transvaal Horse Artillery, and we were trained in the use of 25 pounders. Okay, and
where was 25?
It was a Transvaal Horse Artillery. The headquarters was in Johannesburg. Okay, it was a mounted artillery regiment, and we had 25 pounders mounted on Sherman based tanks. Okay.
So then you Swaziland. Can you just tell us a bit more? You said you really enjoyed Swaziland. What was it that you particularly enjoyed about it?
Well, first of all, moving all around Swaziland. I spent some time in Big Pen, relieving the teller. It was only a 2-man branch. There was a manager and then a slave who did everything. I was the slave there for a while. It was very, very hot, and it was in the bend of the Sutu River, and it was still quite wild. I remember one morning not being able to go to work because of hippos all around the bank.
I remember you telling me that you used to drive around in a Land Rover as well.
Oh, yes. Part of my job for quite some time, I used to drive a mobile bank. Okay, I was given an army issue, I think it was a 32 revolver, okay, which I don't think had ever been fired, but it was fun strapping that on. The back of the Land Rover was rigged out as a counter with a safe in it. And I went to many places, particularly on the border with Mozambique, and I dealt with Portuguese people sending money to either Portugal or to Madeira. Yeah. Okay. And that was nice. And they used to give us presents. Remember, they gave us a bottle of one of those big green bottles.
Demijohn.
Demijohn, okay, with wine in it, which was probably 1 degree away from vinegar. And I shared that with 8 guys, and we finished it in one meal.
And did you go into Mozambique at all?
Yes. I probably spent all my spare cash going into Mozambique, which was a lovely experience because I learnt or experienced continental food and how important food was to people. A meal could last from anything from 2 hours to 4 hours, which was a lovely experience.
You also lived in that house with 8 people.
Oh, yes. I was given a few allowances. One was a housing allowance, and all the staff in Swaziland, most of them were South Africans, young boys like myself. Okay, and we shared a house with four bedrooms. Okay, but there were 8 of us in all, and they stayed in the residence provided by the bank. But we all ate together. All our washing was done at the same place, and that was absolute luxury for me because we had a gardener, we had a cook, and we had I can't remember what the other one is. A housekeeper. So we could, after work, when you got home and you changed your clothes, you just left them on the floor. Okay, everything was done for us. That was a lovely experience. Also, the manager of the bank was a hunter, and I remember he shot a kudu, and he gave the carcass to us. And to begin with, it was very nice, but the meat was so dry that afterwards we just wanted something with fat on it.
You played. Tell me about your rugby. You play. You said you played rugby at
Yeah.
school. You played rugby in Swaziland as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I played rugby in the army. I played commercial rugby, and the South African Rugby Board banned us and said that we had to join a club. So I joined Pirates and probably had 1 or 2 games for them. But the purpose for that was that we could continue playing commercial rugby. That was very good fun. Yeah, there was other banks, other institutions used to play, and we used to play on a Wednesday evening. It was a bit crude, okay, but we eventually got the blessing of the South African Rugby Board. Okay.
And when you were in Swaziland?
When I went into Swaziland, the week I arrived, I was told that they were going to select a team, and I quickly joined the club in Manzini, okay, and went to the trials, and I was selected as a not a supporter,
A
a lock, okay, for Swaziland. But that didn't mean much because we played top clubs rather than provincial sides, and I don't think we ever won a game. I also played hockey. I played squash because there was nothing else to do in Swaziland. Yeah.
And then when you went back to South Africa, what happened there?
I joined Johannesburg Building Society, and that was really, I enjoyed that very, very much. The main branch, the head office branch. Okay. I gained lots of experience there, and I eventually graduated, or before that, I tried to run my own business as an estate agent, which wasn't successful. And I eventually went back to JBS, and that was soon taken over by Allied. I was transferred to Fox Street branch Allied, the only Allied member in this branch. Okay, and it was a bit rough. And I was accountant there for a while, and then I was made marketing manager, and from there I was transferred to to Port Elizabeth, as regional marketing manager.
Just a bit more about your dad. He was a wrestler. Can you
Yes.
tell us a bit about that?
Yes. I do know that he was a wrestler. I remember seeing photographs of him in a one-piece costume with straps over the shoulder, posing. Okay, in 1936. Okay, he was South African heavyweight champion, and I think he could have gone to the games, the 1936 Olympic Games, but he had to pay some other way and he couldn't afford that. Okay. My brother also wrestled with him, and my mother didn't like that because my brother was quite a soft, gentle guy, although he was big and strong. Yeah.
And your mom, what was her maiden name?
Baumgart or Baumgarten, okay, which means tree garden. Yeah.
And where did they come from? Where did your parents come from?
From what I understand, they were both born in Johannesburg. Okay, probably when Johannesburg was one of the wealthiest cities in the world. Okay, yeah. My dad also told me stories about the 1922 miners' rebellion, how he was once had a gun pointed at his head, told to climb a telephone pole, given side cutters, and he had to cut the wires. He said when he got to the top, cut the wires, and he looked down, and he said there was nobody there. Oh, and the other story my dad told me that on one of the headgears, a Maxim machine gun was positioned during this rebellion. And being a young man at that stage, he and his friends went to no man's land, which was just empty houses. And one of his friends put his head out the doorway and he was shot through the head and he fell across the passage into a room on the other side. My dad says he ran around through the back of the house, went to the room, turned the boy over, saw that he was shot. He said he got such a fright that he ran out the door and this machine gun opened up on him. And he actually showed me the holes of the corrugated iron fence, okay, where the bullet holes had followed him.
So in that miners' strike, which was your dad part of the? Was he one of the strikers, or was he?
Yes, he was one of the strikers. Yeah, but still a young man.
Yes. And then your. I remember you telling me stories about motor cars. I remember you telling me.
Oh yes. Okay.
Can you tell us a bit about
my brother was a fitter and turner, also at Crown Mines. Okay, and he continued his studies until he became a mechanical engineer. And when he finished his apprenticeship, he had an Austin 10, an ancient thing. Okay, anyhow, it was falling apart, and it was given to me. Okay, just to play with because I wasn't old enough for a license. And I remember I stripped this. Okay, load the suspension, but it had no body. I was going to build a body when my brother-in-law, Bruce, my sister's husband, said, let's take it for a drive. Well, we took it for a drive and I hadn't put the front suspension back properly and the steering failed. Okay, we went through a wall of a house, okay, and it turned upside down. My parents paid for the repair of the wall, and I had to repay my parents for the cost of the wall. But one important thing is, I always liked cycling. I can remember, which you couldn't do nowadays, being about, I suppose, 14, 15, 16, cycling to Magaliesburg and camping. Okay, with about 6 guys, much my age, and one of the fathers had taken all the the, the camping gear to this spot. Okay, and we camped there for a week, and he came, collected the stuff, and we cycled back. And I got after that, I got very involved in cycling. Okay, I actually made a name for myself in one race. It was called the Colton Cup. I was, I think, 16. I was still a junior, and a friend who was a scratch rider uh, chose me as a partner. It was a 2-man team race. My handicap was 1 minute, so the average handicap was half a minute, 30 seconds. This race was a 2-man team. What do they call it? Time trial. And they drew the names out of the hat to see which team starts. And we were drawn first. Okay, and second was 2 Springbucks. One was Hackett. I can't remember the other guy's name. Okay, and we went off at minute intervals. And these 2 Springbucks behind us never passed us. They caught up on half a minute. So they won it on time. We won it on handicap. And we got second on time. And that's my claim to fame. Oh.
Okay. Then tell us a bit about how you met Mom, how you got married.
No, that's a slightly embarrassing story because I made friends with Richard, whose mom's foster brother, and Anthony, her brother, and I became keen on Pat, and Pat had no idea. I don't think she even looked at me. Anyhow, after 6 months, I built up enough courage, invited her out, and she, or whatever happened, but she accepted. And we had a long, wonderful, most incredible courtship. Okay, from the time she was 16 till the time she was 21.
So how old were you when you got married?
Oh, I was just about a month short of 22.
I was 26.
Then what else was it that I wanted to ask you?
Well, Dad's cycling career.
Yeah, tell us about your cycling career, Dad.
I started cycling in Johannesburg, did reasonably well. And at that time, if you belonged to a club, you eventually got a handicap. And my handicap best ever got was over 25 miles at that stage was 1 minute. So in other words, whatever time I got in a race, they would take 1 minute off of that. But nowadays, they don't do that. Nowadays, there's no handicap at all. But that puts everybody on an equal footing, handicap. And I enjoyed that very much. I used to cycle huge distances. Okay? I used to cycle to school, which helped. I also had a tandem, and everybody wanted to ride the tandem. And I met a few girls that way who wanted to ride the tandem as well. But I was so shy with girls that I don't think I ever spoke to any girl at all.
Okay. And then you started, so what age did you stop cycling and then you started cycling again later?
I probably stopped cycling at the age of 24.
No, when you went to Swaziland, you didn't cycle.
Oh, yes, when I went to Swaziland, that's right. Okay. And the reason for that was I bought a motor car. And I used to cycle to work in town. And of course, once I got the car, my cycling just deteriorated. When we moved to Port Elizabeth.
But what about your MGTC?
Oh, well, my MGTC. Well, I bought an MGTC, a 39 motor car. Okay, it was blood red with, I think it had, I can't remember the upholstery, if it was also maroon, I think. Okay. It was in very good condition. I used to polish this car. I used to put the windscreen down, and that, of course, made me very popular with everybody because they all wanted to borrow it to take out their groceries. And Pat didn't like the car.
I did.
Well, if I took Pat out for a drive, well, I had to put the top up. She didn't like going out with the top down.
No, because we had those beehive hairstyles. You can't drive in the
And then your cycling career later on, when did you start?
I started at the age of, I had to do something when I got to Port Elizabeth, and I bought a bike and started cycling, and then I started getting terrible headaches. Okay, and I had to have an operation to sort that out, and to get my strength back, I started cycling quite seriously.
You had a cyst on your brain.
Yeah, well, do you want to hear about that?
Yeah.
Well, I had a arachnoid cyst on the brain, which was beginning to paralyze the right-hand side of my body. So after the operation, I was told to start running, and I was too big ready to run. So I started cycling, built up my strength, and I found that probably with muscle memory from my earlier cycling, I found that I did quite well at cycling.
How old were you when you had that operation?
About 1989, about
49.
Mm,
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
And then, you cycled a huge amount. And you tell us
Yes.
about your cycling career.
Yeah, when I came transferred to Durban, I joined the club's name.
Kings Park.
Kings Park Cycling Club. And I entered all the local races. And I found one year, about 1998, that in my category, that I was always in the first three. And then all of a sudden I was told by the club that I'd got my Natal colours. And at that time I was about to retire, and I said, I'm going to try and get my South African colours. Okay, and I earned that, and then represented South Africa at the World Champs in cycling.
In Austria.
In Austria, which was a lovely experience. I took Pat with me. I used to train in the mornings and go through all these beautiful towns in Austria, and Pat hired a bike, and then we would spend the morning after breakfast visiting these little towns.
And then after you retired from the bank, you got involved in the Hillcrest Aid Centre.
Yes.
Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, my boy, that is such a long story, but I'll be as quick as I can. The Hillcrest Methodist Church had a minister called, his name was Neil Westhuizen, and he decided that the Methodist Church in Hillcrest needs to start an aid centre. And he did that against much resistance by the public and by the congregation. It was considered a disease that people deserve because of their bad habits. And of course, God loves everybody. Anyhow, I joined. I was eventually appointed a trustee. And when I retired from the bank, I started working for the Hillcrest Aid Centre. And that's probably one of the most rewarding times in my life. That was absolutely incredible experience.
You started as financial manager.
Sorry. Oh, yes, I started as financial manager, and the aid centre grew at such a tremendous rate that it actually needed a professional accountant to take over the finance. And I then retired, anyhow, and they asked me to stay on after the party. And I was given the responsibility of all the assets and looking after all the buildings and to run the nursery. And I did that until I was, I think, 75. I retired again. They asked me to stay on again. And then I worked there until I was 80 and retired at the age of 80.
So when you started, you were this tiny, you operated at a container in the back.
Yeah, it was very small.
And then how big is it now?
Now it's internationally recognized organization. It has volunteers from all over the world. It has a branch in London and a branch in the Netherlands. It has volunteers that come from universities from all over the world to experience the aid situation in Africa. We get donations from all over the world, but of course there's never enough. So all of us had scars on our knees from praying, and that was an experience in itself. I loved working for them.
Thanks, Matt.